Hello and welcome back to the Northern Rose podcast with me, Henry North, and Dr. Adam North.
Hi everyone.
So this week we wanted to talk a little bit about Adam's recent experience, because some people may say that being an academic is boring and they're out of touch. But we wanted to really... Adam wanted to talk a bit about what he's done this week and how it affects a lot of people in terms of social media, because it is interesting and very current, giving some reports that have come out this week. However, before we get started, just wanted to say that we have now got Northern Rose bucket hats, and I know what you're thinking. It's coming into spring. You want to look cool in a beer garden in summer.
And support independent media.
Yeah, and what better way to do it than purchasing a Northern Rose bucket hat? I mean, look at that.
Fits perfectly.
This is a big size, though, because I've got a big head. So maybe we'll get two sizes. So yeah, if you do want to support our channel, we would...
And get something in return for it.
And it's a good product as well, isn't it? It
looks nice.
It's nice.
Maybe we'll have other things up on there as well.
Yeah.
Can't promise anything else yet except for the bucket hats.
Yeah, the bucket hats is dead cert. But maybe these hoodies as well. And maybe, I know we're coming out of winter, but we've had some beanies as well, so we might put them up there as well. So yes, thank you everyone for watching, and let's get into it.
It does make a big difference if you like and subscribe as well, just to help us in the algorithm. So yeah, any other support, much appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, that is the most support you can do is liking, subscribing and sharing with friends. That's the most important. But yeah, if you do want to get a nice bucket hat for this summer, gigs, festivals, just even walking through town.
Maybe if you're at a picket line, you need to keep your head covered, keep yourself in the shade.
Yeah, keep the sun off the back of your neck. No better way to do it than a Northern Rose bucket hat. So that's the sale over. Let's talk social media. So academics. So this week it was actually quite an exciting one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's an interesting week because, like you said, academia sometimes seen as out of touch, maybe not the issues that academics are interested in are not aligned with people's everyday issues. But one project that I've been working on at the minute is about online harms the project is online harms in football, but it's kind of looking at online harms in sports, and went down to Sky Sports offices to talk about online harms with many of the managers who manage journalists, presenters there. Obviously, I'm just collecting data on this project and reporting on it, but it was a really interesting experience.
And it is. I mean, it seems like social media abuse is something that has been going on since the invention of social media. But I saw recently that Barry Keoghan, he says he doesn't want to leave his house now. I mean, I know you're more in a sporting context, but I think it goes to show how bad this affects people's lives.
Yeah, well, I mean, the number of stories that Sky Sports journalists were telling the researchers who've been going down as part of this project is insane. There was video editors were getting hate online for putting up videos with songs that people didn't like. They were getting threats, and it was the case that so many of the journalists had basically adopted the attitude that nothing is going to change here. You either deal with it or you quit the profession, which is not very fair, considering that far more hate goes to women or people of colour than, say, just like a white man. Would get far less stick than people from typically minoritized groups. But yeah, the stories were quite terrible, and to think that people are just going to put up with that online hatred and online harm, it's pretty sad to think about. Obviously,
was it just kind of people resigned to the fact that that's part of the job?
Yeah, part of the job, part of and as well saying it's getting worse, just accepting that society is becoming more kind of a worse place to live, and that this will just continue to get worse. And one thing that the Sky Sports journalist said was, even the head of Facebook had been in, I think this was COVID time, to say, we're going to deal with online hatred, online harm, and make things better for you. Obviously, complete lies, complete nonsense.
They've not done a very good job.
Done nothing at all. And just seeing how it was affecting journalists, because this impacts democracy, as my colleague Jack Black and Dan Kilvington, they were saying in the workshops that they were putting on. It harms democracy, because if journalists can't report on facts or on stories, then people aren't going to get the information they need. Like, there's cases where people won't report on transfers anymore because they're worried about death threats.
Well, interestingly, all this stuff about Polymarket. So Polymarket now is kind of just a betting platform for...
Bet on anything.
Bet on anything. So politics.
You can bet on the Iran war to end tomorrow.
Yeah. And people were betting on whether Iranian missile strikes have hit Israel. So one reporter said that missiles had got through and hit parts of Israel, and that reporter was then getting death threats because he'd effectively, depending on how you'd like to see it, had cost bettors their money by reporting on that piece of news.
Yeah.
So I guess, is that playing into...
Well, gambling is definitely an increasing online harm, because, if you lose out on your bet, you lose money, and you see it as the fault of an athlete because they didn't, score X number of goals that you bet on, then it becomes their fault, becomes their problem, people throwing death threats at them. So I think everything being gambling now has made it worse. And especially in the US, where you can see people betting on basically any sports. So down to the lowest tier of sports, people are betting on it. Maybe not the same in the UK, because we don't have the same college sports TV system. So younger athletes are protected slightly more than in the US. The more that gambling becomes pervasive in our society, and like I said before, everything seems to be gambling now. You can't go 5 minutes down a high street or through a city without a gambling ad. It creates more of that hostility, because if you're losing money and you want someone to blame for that.
Yeah, because it's it's funny in a way, but also worrying in another sense, that I've seen cricket games being played in the middle of nowhere, no one watching, and you're like, how on earth are these professionals getting paid? And you see a big betting advertisement, and you're thinking, well, people probably sitting at home betting on this game of cricket, which they've got no idea about. They don't know about.
Yeah, and gambling, that it's always the case that as people's material conditions get worse, and you don't see upward mobility as a possibility anymore through work, through traditional means of upward mobility, gambling will become the only solution. So this is why in countries typically where wealth inequality has been highest, gambling was always so popular. So India,
recession proof.
They used they basically, there's an interesting story in India actually, where there was a massive problem where no one would pay for the trains because people didn't have the money for it, and also because everyone needed to get the trains. So and then because they couldn't afford to keep the trains running without people paying, they said, what we'll do is we'll put every train ticket will have a lottery number on it. So basically, by buying your train ticket, you've entered into a lottery, and suddenly everyone was buying their train tickets.
Be a bit nicer if they did that here as well too.
It's not.
I've got no chance of winning.
But that's the thing. It turns everything into gambling again. What is the lottery but a gateway into more gambling? In other countries, again, smart countries like Scandinavia, I think in Denmark or Sweden. We'll have to fact check this, but one of them has gambling isn't controlled by the government. So you have a publicly owned gambling, so that it basically doesn't become insane like it is in the UK, the US. It's regulated extremely, so you can't have these predatory industries. And we know people who've worked in these industries where they target vulnerable gamblers, if they know that somebody is spending more than other gamblers and is on it a lot, they will offer them slightly better odds to encourage them to spend more and more and stay on the platform, what they call whales. And I think this is the thing, is that gambling companies make most of their money out of the most vulnerable gamblers. They're not making money out of people who have, who don't really gamble. They're making money out of people who become addicted.
So this is where it comes back to social media, isn't it, really? Because if you're desperate and you've put so much of your money on to bet, and that bet doesn't come through, it can then lead to wanting to have a release.
Yeah, and ultimately this brings us to a bigger issue of social media, and it's kind of been our theme this week, which is that social media likes this hatred. Like, social media platforms actively want that conflict. They want the anger, the extremes.
Emotions, yeah.
Exactly. And what the extremes do is they drive attention, because people are going, whoa, what's this? And then they're following it because they're seeing people shouting at each other. And all it does is it creates this really hostile environment, but it's good for clicks and good for ultimately keeping people on the platforms. And there was a lawsuit came out this week, a class action lawsuit against Facebook and YouTube in the US, that it was judged that they were actively creating platforms that were addictive and detrimental to young people's mental health, which is, I think, no surprise to anybody listening, or if anybody in the world is surprised by that, it would be amazing. But this kind of led to this idea that, and it's no surprise that social media companies, they are not interested in user experience. They're not interested in making it a good experience for us, for the creators or the consumers. It's about, for the creators, it's about basically exploiting the creators to create content at as low a cost to them as possible, and so that they can extract as much profit from the creator as possible.
Because sometimes when we release a short and it goes into the algorithm quite well, that we get to see how many hours of views it's got. So that's work that we have essentially provided for them.
Yeah.
And we make nothing from it.
All of the work that we are doing for you now, that you're watching, that goes online, we don't get at the moment anything for that. Like, it's only because we think that it is of importance to discuss these things, but the people making money out of our work right now are the social media companies.
Yeah.
And this isn't just bad for creators, but it's also bad for users, because ultimately most of your time you're being fed the content that they think you will buy things from the most. So, because this is what's best for business, so they'll feed you content that is focused on selling you something, so that they can then direct you to an ad that will sell it to you, and they make more money off that.
Which is like the whole influencer thing, isn't it?
Exactly. Or just they'll take you to the content that makes you the angriest and makes you the most engaged, rather than giving you the information that's actually best for you. And this is why I'm suggesting that in the UK we need our own social media platform. And this isn't about saying we need a social media platform that does the same thing but just reinvests in the UK, because obviously these social media platforms don't pay any taxes to the UK. They don't contribute to... They basically just exploit and pull resources away from us. I'm not saying just replace a US exploiter with a UK exploiter. I'm saying make it publicly owned. And we have an excellent organisation that could do this, called the BBC, which already has a number of platforms like BBC Sport, BBC iPlayer, BBC Sounds, everything else, BBC News, all of these other things, all of this data this organisation has. Why does it not have a platform that could offer itself as a public square like X claims it is? Like the BBC, again, the BBC is no perfect organisation. Nobody, again, this is a great thing that nobody would agree it's a perfect organisation. And it's not immune from political influence. But to say that the BBC is more it is less immune to influence than say like X, which is owned by a lunatic billionaire, or a ketamine addict, or Meta by basically a kind of weird vampiric zombie man.
Allegedly, the lawyers.
But the BBC will never be immune from politics, just like any company is never immune from politics. But if you have an independent board set up, and the BBC, taxpayer funded, and the focus is on user experience and providing users with accurate information, we could have a social media environment that, again, will never be perfect. You'll never get rid of people who want to shout abuse online, but we could have it far more well regulated, with far more fact checking, far more accurate information that may lead to a much better experience for us all. Not only that, but as creators, we could encourage far more British creators who have great ideas and want to do interesting new things. Like, you know, I'm sure people who go on TikTok, you'll see loads of stuff that's interesting and new, but these people aren't making any money from that, and they're not building the lives that they need to do to sustain it. And that's the thing, is that if we can have a publicly owned social media company that can reimburse its creators without thinking how can we exploit them the most, it's basically you're just funding the maintenance of the platform. You're not funding, shareholders making exorbitant profits off you. Then creators can be paid what creators are worth. It's a win-win situation for everyone. The only problem is political will and the resources, the upfront resources to build it. And that is where the problem will be.
Inevitably lie. But there is other options. I mean, around the BBC, some Facebook comments, one of them was like, how come we don't elect a head of the BBC? Which I think is a fair point. And
like House of Lords, why are we not electing our representatives in the House of Lords?
But one idea that you could potentially look at is around the licence fee. I think that there is money going in to that. Would people... I mean, everyone moans and complains about the licence fee, but potentially, if you knew that you were going to get a social media platform out of that, which was safer for your children, that we would never be in this ridiculous situation where you've got AI-generated images of like child nudity. If people had that kind of assurances that wouldn't happen, it's so insane.
Or even if it was like, if it went up, it would be deleted, whereas Musk wouldn't even delete it. Like, as long as it was, you felt like there was definitely some kind of team in place to deal with it.
Yeah, is that a cost that people would be willing to pay?
Well, yeah,
maybe, but I think the thing is as well is like we've got to look at. I know it's very current as well, but the Manosphere pipeline as well. Would people be willing to pay for social media which doesn't encourage that?
Well, there's 2 points. Is like, one of them, it doesn't actually have to be the BBC. It could just be set up similar to the BBC, where it's got publicly appointed representatives who manage it, and it's similar to taxation goes into paying for it, or a license fee, something like that. And then it's managed in a similar way to the BBC, where it's supposed to have strong guidelines, be regulated, and be ultimately accountable to us, the public.
Because it's interesting now we've started, because I wasn't thinking this before recording, but the BBC was initially set up to be a moderator, wasn't it? Because they had this new invention of the radio, and it's like, well, how can we have something that people can make sure that or regulator, how can they regulate the news? So how can you stop anyone getting on a radio saying this and that is happening? Well, you go to the BBC, because that's where you can get like your proper news. I mean, obviously that's got its own issues, like we say, is state owned, but we have this new form of media, and we've not had that, have we? So
no.
Maybe we do, like, it is now time for us to have this idea of like some kind of moderator where it's like, perhaps there can be, I don't know, aspects of it where you do get your random I mean, like us, we can go on it and we can do our own news, but you still have that kind of team, whether that be through the licensed payer. I'm not sure.
It's we simply can't persist with allowing US companies and US billionaires to dictate the way in which we engage with media, especially when they are happy to allow people to put up terrible videos and pictures of children. Like that's just,
and if that isn't enough for you, then
that's just like the top of the number of issues that they like. Musk actively changing the algorithm to push his stuff over other people. And this is the thing, it's like ultimately these platforms were supposed to be decentralized. So, you know, it would be us, the people, taking power back for ourselves. The means of communication are back in our hands, but they're not. Like the algorithms decide what we see. You know, you might be seeing this now. Maybe the algorithm fed it to you, or maybe you knew to go and look for it. Who knows? But the problem is like who creates those algorithms and who sets the perimeters and the metrics through which we find stuff is not us. It's not us, the British people. And so we, you know, ultimately, we need to bring back the decision making into what content we want to see and what content we want to be aware of. And do we want accurate information or do we want to be fed lies? And that is, I think, the fundamental problem of this all is we need to find a way so that the public, the British public, are able to once again say, we want to see this content and we want regulations on content that lies. We don't want to be fed that content anymore, and we don't want, especially it being the case, like you said, with the manosphere, where you know there's social media companies. They are predatory. They prey on people with vulnerabilities, and rather than feeding them educational or informative content that says, you know, maybe you feel lacking self-confidence or you feel economically vulnerable because of the conditions around you and the current decline in our societies because of inequality, they actually say, oh no, the problem is that, you know, you just don't go to the gym enough and you don't shout enough abuse at women.
And this goes back to sound like a broken record for a moment, but the BBC 3 pillars that it was found on, wasn't it? It was entertain, inform, and educate. I don't know, probably not in that order, but why can't you have a social media that is built on that premise? But what you're saying there is that you don't go to the gym enough. Oh, so what can you do? Like, what was it, that 80-20? Oh, you can't get a girlfriend, you got to go to the gym. So when you go to the gym, you got to buy your protein or whatever.
Yeah, it's to sell you the $1 billion industry of then, you know, whether it's now plastic surgery or it's
peptides.
Yeah, these cosmetic peptides, or it's you know, protein, any kind of supplements. Like these are all things that they're all like part of huge industries that are just telling you buy these things and it will make you better, rather than going, well, maybe we're actually all right. It's just the society that we live in is preying on us and exploiting us, and we need to work to change those things. Oh no, it's not society, it's you. And that's always the point now, is like we are just considered by these companies as consumers to sell things to, and that works for them. Like if they tell you that everything is your fault and your problem, you can buy your way out of it. It's not the case.
Or you're even better, work your way out of it.
Yeah, and like
it's like,
well, I was going to say, we can see in our own content when we put stuff up specifically targeting like structural issues. I don't know if it's because people aren't interested in it, but the algorithm doesn't seem to push it as much. Like even suggest even suggesting that Britain needs a rival social media company. Of course, it's in the interest of these companies to depress that information so that nobody can see it. Because why would they encourage that competition? These companies are not in the business of competition. They're in the business of monopoly and oligopoly. And I understand that having a social media company in Britain, people might say, well, that is creating a monopoly, is it not? Of course not. We're not saying ban every other one. Yeah. We're just saying, like the BBC, BBC isn't a monopoly. The BBC competes with all these other companies.
But it can't advertise. That's the
yeah, can't. But how much better is that if you're watching content on the BBC and it's always not telling you, oh, you need to buy this to be a good person or to be desirable to a potential partner?
Well, I think that comes back to how you fund it.
Of course. And I think my solution is quite a straightforward one. Tax the social media companies that currently pay no tax here yet destroy social fabric. Tax them and use that tax money to pay for our own one. Solution. And if they refuse to pay their taxes, well, you know, they can cease to operate here, and we can build our own company that, you know, does its own thing. But really, the social costs of these companies is so high now that it's like gambling or smoking, right? Smoking, you tax it, but it doesn't really matter how much you tax it, because it's still so bad for people that it's going to kill them, and the cost is going to be so great. That's why it makes sense for the government to ban smoking, because if the costs become so high, it doesn't matter what you tax it, it's not good for people. It's like gambling, right?
Well,
it doesn't matter how
they have taxed smoking out.
Yeah, they've taxed it, exactly.
Those who do smoke now will spend an absolute fortune.
But then they are banning it, because they realise that it doesn't matter how much you tax it; it's just never good for people.
They banning smoking?
Yeah, they ban it, and then it'll go up so that for younger people now they won't be able to buy cigarettes, and then that'll go up, and so in a few generations, no one will be smoking.
Well, there's no. I mean, there's no getting away from social media, though, is there?
Well, it's the same as gambling, right? I would ultimately, I would say, doesn't matter how much you tax gambling. Gambling is really like never a good industry to have. So you have to regulate it. And this is the thing. It's like drugs. Some drugs, right? You could say doesn't really matter how much you tried to tax them. It's just never good to give it to people, but some drugs, because they'll always have real big harms. But you know that people are always going to want to do them. So you have to find ways to regulate these industries so that you can say to people, if you are going to do them, if you are going to gamble, like in Denmark where they know people are going to gamble, but we will regulate it to ensure that we minimise harms as much as possible. So people are always going to use social media. And I don't think social media is like inherently bad. It's just a tool of communication. But it's about saying, can we regulate it? Can we build it in such a way that we minimise potential harms? And of course we can.
Because the thing is, it's like social media, when I first got on Instagram, it was just you followed your mates and then people would post and you'd see it. Whereas like people now, like that I know, will post on social media and I won't even see it. Because like it's not had much engagement. I'll get pushed something else by a random creator, by some random person. And I remember seeing or hearing a stat, and it was like something like 20% of what you see on social media is from people that you know.
Well, I think that's part of the problem, is like maybe when they were first invented, when these kind of up and coming Silicon Valley executives were designing these things, they were thinking, oh, you know, it'll connect people, it'll do a public good. But then the money became so good and so appealing, and they realised, oh, we can micro-target ads at people. And that's the problem, is that ultimately it was just corrupted. I don't think when they set out, I don't think they really thought of it being this tool for selling us stuff. I think they thought, Mark Zuckerberg, it was like a sexist, you know, how can we rate people's looks online? And then it was like, oh, we can connect friends to each other. But like you said, it doesn't connect friends anymore. All it does is it kind of feeds you the thing that it thinks will keep you on the platform the longest, based on all the data points it has on you from across all the information it's picked up over time.
Which goes to show that because the point where we're at now, it isn't an inevitability.
Yeah, it's not. No.
It can definitely go... We can change this.
Well, let's say that if it was publicly owned and the public could hold the companies accountable, would they have focused on creating products that basically actively gave young girls eating disorders? Like the Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen said that they discovered in their research. Facebook was actively giving young girls eating disorders. They found that in the research and they suppressed it, and they didn't do anything about it, so she had to whistleblow. If it was a public company, I was about to say all of these executives would be in prison. They probably wouldn't, because unfortunately things don't work perfectly. But they would have been held far more accountable. And that is the point. It's like, can we hold people accountable, and can we ensure that the thing is like, maybe they still would have tried to do it, but just like with like the post office scandal, or like with currently like a number of, anything happens within the publicly owned companies, there's hell to pay. Whereas these private companies, they can just get away with stuff.
I mean, it's even worse with social media because they're not even on these shores, are they? They're in the States, like, as if anyone is like the British law system's going to be able to catch up with
it can't.
Musk.
No, and that's the thing. It's like there's an instance of Ofcom trying to regulate a small forum on the internet called 4chan. So 4chan is this kind of, it's like Reddit, but where more racist people go. And the government tried to regulate 4chan and tried to charge them a fine, and they said, we refuse. And they've not paid the fine. And there's no real consequences for them. So if there's no consequences for a very small forum website, these social media companies, like, if they get a fine of even £200 million or something like that, that's pennies to them. Like, they don't care. It's not going to stop their predatory behaviours. The only things that would make real impact is fines that, like, was a quarter of their profits or something like that. That force either, basically it would be in their material interest to change their structures so that they're not hit with these massive fines.
You went on like a Yanis Varoufakis approach and said that if you do not do this, we'll take 15% if you're...
or we'll actually take ownership. We will take, we will take shares in your company. Yeah. And for instance, like after the financial crisis, the government took hold of NatWest, like a big proportion of NatWest. And then they ensured that over that time, the bank wasn't able to participate in predatory banking behaviours or behaviours that would put the bank at risk. And nothing happened over the time since then. Now the government has largely sold off all its shares to NatWest, and we're starting to see real cracks again in banking within financial sectors. Because when you don't have this regulation, when you don't have accountability, of course people are going to do things that they probably shouldn't be doing. Mm-hmm. And look at crypto. Famously, crypto, it's basically all scams, and it's not regulated at all. So it's all scams. That's all it is. Like, if you don't have any regulation, things become scams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's when we start talking about like regulation, you got to look at who's for it and who's against it, and who is against it.
Yeah.
Like the nice, like I guess, your millionaires, your billionaires are against regulation, and who's for it?
Richard Tice against regulation, also avoided £600,000 in tax.
600,000, yeah, 600 million.
He's not that rich. Yeah. But this, I would say, I had this discussion the other day with some friends, and we were discussing what is a patriot. This is this term that's thrown around a lot. What is a patriot? I would say personally, a patriot is somebody who pays their taxes into the system and doesn't complain about it. Because what are you doing by doing that? You are ensuring that the state is continuing in its capacity to manage and govern and look after us. Everyone complains about paying their taxes because we can all be a little unpatriotic at times. But who are the worst people in our society? It's the people who refuse to pay their taxes. And they refuse to pay their taxes because they don't think that all the things that the state pays for applies to them. They don't use public healthcare. They don't use public transport. They don't they don't use public education. They don't use spaces that the rest of us use. So they say, "Oh, well, I don't need to pay for that because I don't use any of it. It's just for the plebs." But they do. They use all the infrastructure that we've built, roads, energy, everything. They just choose to say the things that are convenient to them, and they are the worst people in our society. They're not patriotic, and they're the very people that claim to be the biggest patriots of all.
And I just think that it's no more summed up with someone like Rio Ferdinand.
Yeah. Well, let's not... Yeah, I mean, he's an easy target, isn't he?
He's a low-hanging fruit. But I just think with people like that, not necessarily just Rio Ferdinand, but people who have made an absolute fortune out of the UK, made them wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. And what do they do with this wealth? Do they think, oh, maybe I should potentially pay, not even give back, but pay what I owe to this country that has made me what I am today?
And give others the opportunity.
Yeah, or just simply a recognition of that this country has enabled me a life that people can only dream of, that I only dreamed of. Or should I just go abroad and avoid paying it all?
Yeah.
And people do that day in, day out. And they not only do that, they insult and attack this country.
From constantly.
From abroad.
And they'll say things like, they'll call for the US administration to take charge and, a violent coup to take Keir Starmer out. And you think,
And do you like those missiles flying over your heads in Dubai?
But the problem is when a lot of these people say patriot, they just mean born in the UK. And a lot of them don't even mean that. They mean like generations born in the UK. That is the only thing that makes you a patriot. And if that is your definition of what a patriot is, it's a very sad, unfulfilling one. Whereas why do we not reclaim the idea of a patriot being somebody who is prepared, like you said, Henry, to give back to a country that gives us so much? And that is failing for lots of us now. Lots of us do not feel like our country is giving us the opportunities that it may once have done, or giving us the chances that we need to build the lives that we want to live. And that is the problem. It's like once your country stops providing you upwards mobile routes, you will become disaffected with it. You will become unpatriotic. And unpatriotic people don't want to pay their taxes because they feel that the system is failing them. But if the system doesn't fail you, if the system lifts you up, raises you up, gives you everything you need to succeed, why would you not want to pay? That is a patriotic thing to do, to say, this system works, I'm paying into it. The worst thing is these super wealthy people who you think they've been given everything, then they go, and I don't want to pay anything back. They are unpatriotic. They're the worst. They are parasitic. They are killing this country.
I think it was summed up the best when all of a sudden you want to get out of Dubai. Who do you call?
Who do you call?
People. Exactly. The
Keir Starmer.
Yeah, and lo and behold, here they are picking them up.
Yeah.
And these are people who you kind of think, if the shoe was on the other foot, would they send money? Would they send?
No. Well, they're effectively refugees.
Yeah.
But they hate refugees from other war-torn countries who flee because they're scared for their lives because bombs are flying. Who come over to this country and they say, "Get out! We're not paying for you." Oh well, suddenly when they're in a bit of trouble, come and help me, British state.
So how have we got onto this then? So. We started with social media, and now we're on to the boats.
Yeah.
People moaning about boats.
I think this has always been a question about... social media has such a big impact in our lives, and I think many of us probably underestimated 10 years ago the role it would play. But as a kind of key source of news and information, it's simply unavoidable, even if you're not on it. It's playing such an important role in our lives that we need to take steps now to pressure our government and pressure our institutions to start building an alternative that protects us. And this isn't just children, this is all of us. Like, we're all under serious threat of a much worse society if we allow things to continue in the way they are. But on a positive note, we can build an alternative. It can be done. And this is the thing, is like, if we are to trust in a politics of, to quote the Green Party, a politics of hope, a politics that says actually things don't have to decline forever. Actually, we can take steps to protect and preserve our public institutions that we hold dear. Well, we can change things for the better. It can be done. Look at after World War II. We rebuilt this country from scratch. We created one of the greatest welfare states of all time that looked after people and gave them the opportunity to build themselves up. And that can be done again.
And the country was broke at that point.
Yeah, of course.
So
yeah, spent all the money on the war.
Yeah. This idea that you need to wait for things to happen get out there and be proactive.
It's all right as long as we can have 1% economic growth a year. Then things will be good.
Life's good. Right, positive note. Let's leave it on that.
Yeah, there is hope. Stay politically active.
What's one?
Talk to your friends. Talk to your family. You're never going to convince someone you don't know who's a Reform voter, but you can always convince your friends and family. They are people that you might not win. You're not going to win them to your side overnight, but it's about pushing that meter. It's a game of inches.
Making them have that thought. But what's one positive news story that you've seen?
Positive news story. God, have you got one?
I've got two.
Whoa, okay. Don't show off.
Yeah, well. First one was that, I'm not sure how many people saw, but there was a case of migrant nurses in the NHS facing deportation over £62 a year to do with like Matt Hancock raising the visa requirements, which would then put the band which the NHS migrant nurses were on just underneath that.
So they'd be earning just under what they needed to stay.
Yeah, about £62. Yeah. At MRI, they have raised that band, so all of those migrant nurses are now safe within their visa requirements for now. So that is a piece of good news.
That's good.
And second, I think the ozone layer has shown signs of recovery.
Nice.
So
It's been recovering for a while, hasn't it?
Has
Since
it?
we started using what are they called, FPFs, was it?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, apparently they've got data to show that it is in fact healing.
Very good.
So, yeah.
Well, and you know, also to say, in America, the Democrats are flipping loads of Republican elections. So the Republicans have flipped nothing and Democrats have flipped loads. And in the UK, obviously, Reform are polling lower now than they were. The Greens are on the rise. Gorton and Denton gives us hope. You know, there is reason to be hopeful, and we need to keep on the gas, because I think, you know, all of us, those listening, talking about these things and sharing them and spreading the news that there is a party prepared to be more extreme, that we don't have to manage decline, we can rebuild, renew. It's not all bad.
Yep. So get your bucket hats, and thank you for watching and listening as always. Really appreciate it. We've grown a bit recently.
Yeah, happy days.
So yeah, we're starting to get a bit of a following now, and yeah, hopefully we'll have some big stories on the way as well. We're off to, well, by the time you watch this, but yeah, if you've not seen it, watch the Gorton Monastery video. That has taken some time to do, but yeah, it's a fantastic story. That's another positive story. 30 years of that, actually, of that restoration project. Building completely derelict, and is now really a building that the city of Manchester can be very, very proud of. And
community, and
that is
a space for community, things that we need.
Entirely community driven, that. So no big
feel
Saudi
good story.
Millionaire Russian oligarch money coming in to save that, as it seems, or Chinese ownership. It's just people from Manchester standing up to
reclaim
protect a building,
their spaces.
Yeah, that they once held very dear. So yeah, watch that. It's a good story.
Feel good story.
Yeah, feel good story. Thank
Bye.
you.